Well, hello, my friends, and welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, we are going to be covering the also important topics of good and evil. And it turns out that, well, didn't turn out, but in the meek philosophy, these are actually quite simple concepts. But we'll go ahead and explain it briefly. Try and keep this video short and on point so I don't ramble so much and get off topic, because that can happen. Um, but I did spend the last couple days watching other folks try and talk about good and evil, and mostly they spend a lot of time on evil. Seems like the more popular subject to talk about. But it seemed like they were really, really having a hard time, and they're almost like trying to pinpoint a source of where it comes from. And that kind of makes sense. It felt more like blame than anything else, though. And I'm not trying to pick on folks, but I don't think that's helpful. So, evil, good and evil, is there a source? The answer is, of course, yes. So let's go ahead and break that down. In this philosophy, we always have to break it down to the root. We believe that there is a God that exists outside of this space that is information, knowledge, data, whatever. It's unexplorable and unknowable, and it became conscious. And consciousness then generated this material world that we live in. So this world is a creation. You can call it the matrix, call it the simulacrum. You can call it, the dream time. Throughout all of history, we've come up with different names for this space, but we just call it creation. So within creation, we became our conscious experience of the material world generated conscientiousness. And conscientiousness is the source of good and evil. But it was the experience of the material world. So that is the source of where these things come from. Before the experience of the material world, I don't believe that good and evil existed. So outside of this material space, good and evil does not exist. It is a simply neutral field, neutral space. It's experience that generates these things. So how are we going to break this down and explain it in a simple form? 2-3 years ago, I recorded several videos exploring these concepts. Then, just like now, I'm following a Jordan Peterson principle. I don't like to use names, but I will in this case. But he said that he's going out on tour and speaking because he's trying to figure out what he means. And that's literally what I'm doing. I'm trying to figure out what do I believe? And then how do I speak this belief into this world concisely? And it's a struggle for sure. I am not very good at it. And most of it deals with the fact that I don't like being on camera. I absolutely hate being on camera. And messes up my ability to think. But I have to get over this, as I covered in the first video. So those videos I made a couple of years ago, I was walking through trying to understand where does it come from. And I'd spent quite a bit of time. I've literally spent probably the last 3 years reading Genesis over and over and over again and learning where these things come from. So learning the original stories, the stories that are in Genesis, and then all the interpretations throughout, from the different religious groups on what they believe that it means. So I figured that good and evil, the knowledge of good and evil, were directions like on a map to help us traverse this space. That's a great way of seeing it. It's like the whole point of having a belief or a philosophy is to help you travel through this space and be the most successful, I suppose, is one way of looking at it. Happiness is definitely not it. But I don't know if accomplish is right, but to be the best that you can be in this space and to live the most fulfilling life within this space, knowing how to navigate through the material world and understanding how to navigate through this world. It's just unquestionably necessary. And I think it's what's wrong with a lot of folks today in this world. Everyone wants to go with like their gut instinct. And at the core of what the meek philosophy is no. Most religions and most of the great religious teachers throughout all of history have taught that you have to learn how to suppress your emotions. These are what I call the lesser gods or angels and demons. And yes, you must learn how to suppress these things. We have a mind to help to sequester these needs and these desires and all of this sort of thing. Otherwise, we could become a hedonistic mess quickly, which is what's happening now. And good and evil are the concepts that we use or that are there for us to help us decide which way to go, to help in our decision making. So to keep it as simple as possible, I've broken it down to 2 words. Good is fertilizer and evil is poison. And if you apply that concept to life, to your decision making, I believe it will genuinely help. It's not even what I'm trying to say. It's not that it'll help. It'll help you understand what's happening or what decision you need to make. Perhaps that's what I'm trying to say. You need to know what good is and you need to know what evil is so that you are able to act in this world. And in the book of Genesis, several times, humanity's asked to go out and multiply. But in the meek belief, we believe that God probably meant something more like to go out in the world and make life flourish in this world. We are to be the applier of fertilizer and poison. You see, because even though our experience generated this like positive goodness and this negative evilness, we have the knowledge of both. And this is really important because we have the ability to apply both. And a simple example of that is a tree or a bush. We go out and we prune them because it makes them stronger. It makes the overall ecosystem stronger. We are taking a negative of killing off part of a being, inflicting pain, inflicting suffering on these plants. These plants do feel what we're doing to them, but it makes them stronger. It makes life stronger in this world. You have animals like wolves and lions and whatnot that go out and hunt the herd type animals. And there was actually a scientific research done, a paper written in Canada. They followed this pack of wolves and they examined the kills that they made. And they found like 80 or 90% of the animals that they killed had something wrong with them, some sort of disease or something. So what the wolves were doing were literally improving the quality of the life being lived in this world. So was the death of that animal brutal? Probably. Would we call it evil? Probably. But is it a net positive to the material existence of this space? And the answer is probably yes. It's the reason why it exists. And it is through our experience of this material world and the application of consciousness and conscientiousness, the application of good and evil, that make us human. It's who we are. Now, these things can definitely, how am I going to phrase this? They can consume the world. They can, because they are a lesser God, they can possess the world. And it's, again, the understanding of what is good and what is evil and being able to genuinely understand and apply this knowledge to what we see, I do believe there are recent events that you can look back honestly and go, wow, they were evil from the beginning. Some folks understood, but the vast majority did not. I'm rambling again. So we're going to go ahead and cut it there. Good and evil were generated through the conscious experience of the material world. That's the source. And they are to provide us direction so that we can travel through this life and perhaps be the most successful, most fulfilled version of ourselves, or the opposite. We get to choose. With that, my friends, my silly glasses, I will see you on the next one. Until then.